Personnelity. I'm your host, Lori Rawlings from Lori Rawlings and Associates. And my guest today is Earl Buford, who is the president of the Council for Adult and Experiential Learning, or CAEL. He's a lifelong champion of projects that improve job seekers' and employers' quality of life. And he's currently leading CAEL's mission of providing solutions to promote sustainable and equitable economic growth in collaboration with workforce and economic developers, post-secondary educators, employers, industry groups, foundations, and other mission-aligned groups. He's an active board member of a number of boards, including the National Fund for Workplace Solutions, Cleveland Federal Reserve Board, Pittsburgh Chapter, Bridgeway Capital, Pittsburgh Cultural Trust, Midwest Urban Strategies, and the Ready to Work Coalition. He's also a former member of Joe Biden's Advisory Task Force on Effective Workforce Strategies, the Wisconsin Governor's Task Force on Minority Unemployment, and the National Skills Coalition Advisory Board. Earl, welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Lori, thank you for having me. First of all, anytime I get a chance to spend time with you is welcome, and to talk about subjects I enjoy and work personally and professionally. So here we go.
You're too kind, sir. Can you tell us a little bit about CAEL and its mission?
And I have to always start with this joke. CAEL is a great organization. It's not just a great salad. So
CAEL is healthy and good for you.
Exactly. There you go. So, we are a national nonprofit. It was created in 1974, so it's been around a while, almost as old as I am. And we're also part of a larger network. In 2017, we joined what's known as Strata Education Network. And so Strata is quite a giant in this country for the work that the impact and the investments that it makes. So to be a part of a group that has the reach and the resources to support our work, in addition to other partnerships, is truly amazing. So just wanted to make sure I mentioned Strata here. CAEL has a really proud legacy of our work in post-secondary education. We're also a membership organization, and that's most folks don't know that. So we have about 3,000 members, individual members from a variety of higher ed institutions and workforce agencies. We also have workforce employers who are partner members. We have about 700 higher ed institutions that are members. So that really gives us a chance. You mentioned earlier other different stakeholders that we connect. Well, having membership, as you know from your past life, is truly makes it easier to support whatever mission and whatever drive you have. So, and we've also been kind of the pioneer and source for the past 40 years on what's known as credit for prior learning. And in past circles, CPL, credit for prior learning, used to be known as prior learning assessment, or PLA. And I can joke with you, because in both of our past lives, PLA meant something different. We really encouraged recognition of diverse educational experiences, and also the fact that, with adult learners as our centerpiece, that everything we do is geared towards how do we make this pathway more recognizable, easier in some situations for adult learners. And, that benefits all of us, whether it's upskilling, reskilling, credentialing, job placement, education as a force. All those things come into play with our work on behalf of adult learners.
And so let's talk a little bit more about credit for prior learning, because that is a main focus of CAEL, helping post-secondary institutions successfully respond to non-traditional students' interest in return on investment for a college education, which is a really novel concept, right? Can you tell us a little bit more about what credit for prior learning is, how it works, and why it's important?
Yeah, by definition, it's we call it a diversifying instrument. So it really opens up pathways for individuals to either go back to school or to go to college, whether it's technical college, community college, 4-year, it really doesn't matter. But really think about it in the simplest form. It's a tool that allows a university to assess someone's background. So whether they've had past college experience, but also take into account their work experiences. And so that's what's really cool about this, because I think just all the years of performing workforce, and if we had this, even if we had CPL as part of our workforce systems and some of the assessment, when someone walks to a job center to say, all right, you know what, your past work is your job ready, but you're also, you're now ready to go back to university, or we'll place you with this employer. The employer is probably going to have some kind of a tuition reimbursement program or something. Well, so we're also, my long and short of that, we're also trying to now have conversations on the industry side about using CPL as a tool as well. So it's not just for the individual, not just for the institution, but also, from your past life, how important if more employers had took that as part of their talent attraction strategy to say, we're going to help you, get the credential you need, or the AA or the baccalaureate that you need or we desire. Here's a way to do that. So one of the things that some universities, not everyone does it. So that's why we have so much work in front of us. But because a lot of institutions have said over the years that, it shortens the time for students at our institution, which means we lose money. And that's just not the case. So I'm going to go over a couple things. Our research shows that on the average, adult earners with 12 more CPL credits saved 9 to 14 months, of their time at the university. Adult students who earn CPL saved anywhere from $2,000 to $10,000 in tuition dollars. So again, it's really helpful to that. Overall, adults who can earn credit for prior learning are 17% more likely to graduate than adults who do not. The completion benefit is 25% for adults at community colleges, 24% for Hispanic adults, 13% for Black adults, and 19% for Pell Grant recipients. Now I'm going to find the research with our universities. So our research shows that completion increases by 70%, as I mentioned earlier. But it also does is it really fires up a student to want to complete. And so they're going to complete. They're going to take all the required courses. They're going to pay tuition. So that retention rate is higher because of that. And so that's what the institutions that have, the majority of institutions that are utilizing CPL are benefiting from that completion. Their completion numbers are up. So that leads to another situation, which we can get into. And that's where now you're graduating, where's the job? So a lot of college presidents, we've surveyed our member, and the president's now saying it's our job to think about our students' economic goals. And that's make sure they have work lined up, making sure that there's some articulation between our co-op programs and our employers. There's our reciprocity between community colleges and four-year universities. So all these conversations are happening now to make systems better, to benefit industry, and to benefit, obviously, the student or adult learners. So it's just a few research items that we've done. I can spend 2 hours on just the research alone, but I think your listeners get the point.
Yeah, so I want to pick up on a couple of things that you mentioned there that I think are really important. I mean, number one, the completion rate for adult learners who are given credit for prior learning is significantly higher for people who come in without credit for prior learning. And that's a good thing for not only the student, but also for the academic institution, right? Because they measure their success in terms of completion rates. Is that right? Yeah. And so then the other thing is, again, the novel concept of actually, trying to use the post-secondary education system as an actual pipeline to connect people to a career once they actually complete their college degree, which is really not the traditional way that we think about post-secondary education. Can you talk a little bit more about that and how you're kind of trying to redefine that role to actually get people connected right to a job once they get out of school? Yeah,
it's funny. It's been long talked about. It's been hard to connect and articulate, but it's something I learned back in our work together at the Wisconsin Regional Training Partnership in those days. And if you recall, we were running training programs with joint apprenticeship committees and contractors and labor management in general, and we set up a system where our graduates were basically guaranteed employment with said employers, not just sometimes it was a big, large stadium project, things like that, but just in the everyday process. So we had enough of a strong relationship with the said stakeholders, but we also we asked them to develop the curriculum. So it wasn't as if we were doing training programs on our own. It was developed and assessed by the industry So I said, if you're going to develop that, then these individuals are doing everything you've asked. So there should be an easy path for them to come into this job, whether it's a apprentice or material handler or whatever. So we're kind of taking that same approach here with our university partners. And if your degree programs are truly aligned with the needs of industry and employers, then there shouldn't be any, and then vice versa. If industry is involved on your institutional advisory board and things like that, then there should be some synergy. If that's the case, why can't we figure out a way that when these seniors in certain programs graduate, they should be able to walk right into a job with said industry or municipality or public sector or whatever the case may be. So those are the conversations, negotiations we're starting to have. And I call them articulation agreements. I've been chided a bit by higher ed partners, so I have to think of a new term. But that's basically what it is. It's basically cutting deals and making agreements that benefit both sides. And as I ramble, I stolen a phrase from one of my old bosses, Mayor Tom Baird of Milwaukee. He used to always say, there's two ships passing the night. Employers are saying they can't find people, and people say they can't find jobs. So we're trying to help those ships intentionally collide.
Yeah, exactly. And so one of the things you're doing is actually involving employers with development of curriculum. Can you tell us a little bit more about those partnerships?
Yeah, so for 20 years, we've managed two industry education partnerships. One is in the energy sector, the acronym is EPCI. The other one is NACTEL in telecommunications. So we have major employers, Verizon, AT&T, Duquesne Light, et cetera. So major employers in this country, and then higher ed partners who are aligned together, and labor as well. Communication workers, IBEW are part of that. So we're putting all the right players in the room. And they are having these conversations, developing these articulations, and we're there to staff and manage it and bring support to that. So that's 20 years of that. So we've seen nothing but great success on that. So now, we're starting to redevelop that for other industry. So right now we're in major conversation with the semiconductor industry, and we're this close, my forefinger and the thumb are next to each other, to developing a similar industry education partnership with the semiconductor industry, thanks to the grant from their own industry to get started. We're also on the early stages of a financial services industry education partnership as well with all the major banks in this country and their national association. And you'll love this. Just started some conversations recently with the AGC of America and the variety of their chapters to do two things. One, help them think about how to do pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship for those who haven't. But what I'm really excited about is a professional services articulation agreement where schools such as, we have like 12 HBCUs that are members, and there's another, and HGCA is also been funding through their foundation. So we're trying to figure a way to see what schools have construction management, engineering, architecture programs that can develop that direct correlation and onboarding, whether it's through work-based learning or co-ops, and eventually, upon graduation, go right into the construction industry. So we're having those major conversations right now.
That's fantastic because, one of the things that I've been focusing on is how to fix this labor shortage, that it's been coming and we're just not replacing our retiring journey workers at the rate that we need to. And it's been exacerbated by the pandemic. So that's great to hear that you are trying to figure out a way to fix that broken pipeline. So one of the other things I know that CAEL is working on is helping employers reskill their existing employees as technology changes. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, and again, a lot of that work started with our two partnerships I mentioned earlier. And so with those major companies and those labor partners and bringing in those right institutions, we're really focusing on that. So we've had conversations about everyone wants new talent, but it's like, well, have you trained and upskilled internally? And so the answer was, in some cases, no. So let's fill that void, and then you can backfill, and we can work with you on new talent attraction strategies. But let's take care of this first. So that even the burgeoning relationship with the semiconductor industry is going to do just that. It started with upskilling and reskilling. Same thing with our telecommunications folks as well. So. There's no magic potion to it. It's really just getting everyone on the same page about that need and then what resources are there to support it. So I say resources, what institutions are aligned with what you're thinking on reskilling and upskilling in your local areas, or nationally. There were also, and no surprise to anyone, with the federal resources that are flowing through a variety of federal departments, we'd be remiss if we didn't make that connection as well. Whether it's around apprenticeship or income worker strategies, which is really what upskilling and reskilling is. So pretty much every industry we're working on, I mentioned earlier, are in the middle of an incumbent strategy that upskill and reskills, but also with a backfilling talent attraction strategy as well. So it's really a kind of an ecosystem approach to, what are all the ways to fill the gaps, deal with the shortage. It's one thing I'm going to veer off for a second. I was really shocked recently at one of our Federal Reserve meetings where someone mentioned that the biggest industry you've lost is education, which we've heard and read that, but they're reskilling and going into tech. I'm trying to get others, if that's going to happen, two things have to happen. One, how do those other industries start to take advantage of these really brilliant people who are educators? But second, how do we help backfill education? So that's a conversation we're looking to take on soon as well, because I didn't realize that till a month ago. Even though I read all these articles, I didn't know the numbers were so. I think they're like 48% or something like that of educators are leaving the industry.
Wow, and what do you attribute that to?
It was a couple things. Obviously the pandemic really fostered that thinking. Like, okay, well, maybe it's not a safe environment. I'm not respected as an educator. All those factors are in play. So now it's a good time to rethink where I wanted to go, or my family, or whatever the case. That's what I've heard so far. We have to do more research on that, but that's what I'm seeing and hearing so far. But 40% is a huge number.
That is a huge number, and it kind of highlights something you were talking about earlier, which is the importance of doing everything you can to hang on to the employees you have and reskill them or upskill them to meet the challenges of the changing world, because turnover is really expensive. And, so the holistic approach that you're taking to making sure that people can retrain their existing workforces, to keep them in place, to meet their needs is really a bright strategy. So, one of the other main focuses for CAEL is advocating for the equitable treatment and support of adult learners and other underserved populations. Can you tell us a bit more about CAEL's work in that area?
Yeah, so there's a couple of initiatives that really focus on that. One was our Latino Adult Student Success Program, or LAS as it's known. So we piloted in Texas with the help of Greater Texas Foundation and some other philanthropic partners. And the beauty of that was it's really taking our work and really honing in on CPL for that student base. And while we're working with institutions that are doing this in general, we wanted to really hone in on that. So that, and again, the success rate was, if I believe it was a 1.0 phase. We're going to 2.0 very shortly. So we're starting up again with 5 more universities, not just the 2 we started with. But the 2-year success rate at the community college level was, I think it was about 60% of completion or credential. So that's really exciting. So we can't wait to do that and expand that. We're also in conversations with our energy education partnership with a variety of native focused colleges, and right now working on a energy initiative with them and some conversations from some federal support as well. So that's pretty cool. And I mentioned earlier, we're in the midst of a HBCU initiative that Strata has pledged $25 million to the HBC Foundation, and have 40 universities that have signed on for this. And we have 12 of our members, and that's going to expand as well. And that focus is going to be really connecting education to work. And so we're thinking about, looking at internship opportunities, co-op, work-based learning. But really, ultimately, I mentioned earlier, the idea is for major employers, these institutions, to really articulate a way for those graduates to go right into work.
That's great, because, so many people graduate from college with $100,000 in debt and no job. And It's just tragic. I mean, getting back to Mayor Barrett's comments earlier about the ships just kind of passing in the night. It's it's amazing that more post-secondary institutions aren't doing things like this to actually try and make sure their graduates have a job offer in hand when they graduate.
No, it's just that was startling when I started this position a year ago, and I had a conversation with a really good friend of mine, president at University of Pittsburgh, Chatham University, and Dr. David Feingold. And we were sitting down. He goes, "I have to find jobs for my seniors." He was like the first one that really said it. Just resonated because I hadn't, in my whole workforce life, we think that way, but I've never heard. And it's just kind of steamrolled from there. So all of our member presidents are thinking that way now, and it's really exciting that they are because they benefit and industry benefits and students, of course, benefit. So
yeah. How many post-secondary institutions are you working with and across what geographic area?
So membership-wise, we have, like I said, about 700. And then we have another probably 300 or 400 individual higher ed professionals who are under a singular membership. So that's over 1,000 right there. It's national in scope. It truly is. But we started some pockets of work in some major states. So, for instance, we were doing some great stuff, starting to do some great things with Washington State Community College System, thanks to Dr. Christine Johnson in Spokane Community College. We're also working with the Community College System in Minnesota. We are starting to do some major work in Southeast markets, thanks to partnership with some financial service institutions. And there we're, our members are anchor. We have a great relationship with Pace University in New York. So I mentioned earlier, I work in Texas with those institutions there. So truly national, but there's still pockets of where our work is focused. I'm really hoping to reconnect in Milwaukee, or Southeast Wisconsin, I should say, with, there's a group there, Higher Education Regional Alliance. It was formed in 2016, and there's about, I think it's 18 leading public and private institutions there, major employers, and also the three workforce boards in that region are all part of this coalition. So that's just a really cool model, and I'm looking to work close with them moving forward.
That's wonderful. So if there are post-secondary institutions or employers who are interested in working with CAEL, how do they go about getting connected with you?
Just going to CAEL.org. We have a landing spot for membership, landing spot for relationship building. Of course, like I said, you can reach out to me directly. One of the things we're also, we have in the past 4 months, we've added on some new staff. We'll have a vice president of community relations. So that person's out developing the partnerships for us. We also have, we're this close to hiring a vice president of industry relations. And that person's job will be to eat, sleep, and drink relationships with employers and industry. So we'll have, that's how committed we are to those relationships. And of course we have, most of our staff are really available and eager to get to work with our membership side and our higher ed partnerships. We have a variety of staff that are, from that background. So, but the easiest way to just drop me a note and we'll follow up from there.
And you also work with philanthropic organizations that support adult learning and equitable access to education. Could you tell us a little bit more about those partnerships?
Yeah, without them, this work would be next to impossible. One of the things I have often thought was really important is to have kind of a blended funding approach to these things. That's where, corporate support, philanthropic support, public support, state support, blending all those things together because you have more flexibility then in your work as opposed to being tied to a contract or a dollar type of resource. So philanthropy, it starts with Strata actually. So Strata has been very generous to us as a network member in their support. So a lot of our pilot projects are supported by that, whether it's outright or matching. And then some of our other major partners right now, we were really excited about. We just opened a Pittsburgh office it opens this Friday. So CAEL, we're housed in Indianapolis, but we're also because of the work in Pittsburgh, and that market is starting to grow. So the Hillman Family Foundation, Heinz, Heinz the Ketchup, their foundation has gifted us to form a presence in Pittsburgh. I mentioned earlier, Greater Texas Foundation has been a huge fan partner. Koch Family Foundation has also, we're working on a few projects thanks to their generosity. So there's a few, but there's so many more that we are either in conversations with or have funded us in the past. The Illumina Foundation has funded us in the past as well. So, and we're, like I said, constantly in conversations about other projects around the country.
So you referred to, some of the work you've done in the past in Milwaukee with the Wisconsin Regional Training Program, Big Step. And I know you have a long history in workforce development. Can you tell us a little bit about what drew you to working on these issues?
I love that question because it comes together in a couple of different ways, including one we mentioned earlier about finding a job after undergrad. But for me, it was always personal. So I'm the product of a high school pregnancy. My parents had me in high school, and that can usually go a lot of ways. Normally, in most cases, not very successful. But so my parents are kind of living proof of everything we just talked about. My mother went back to school and went to education. My father was probably the symbol of the guy we most try to help in workforce development. High school graduate, he could find work in $6-7 an hour. This in the '70s, manufacturing jobs, but that wasn't the way to support a kid and a family. So he went through a job training program that was directly tied to a major employer. And so when he graduated, he went directly to work for a General Motors plant, AC Delco, and spent 30 years there and retired from there. And I've often called that we won the workforce lottery when that happened, and it changed our lives forever. There's in ways you can imagine. So from raised his family and buying a home and sent me to private school and all those things that you want to do for your children that my parents were able to do. So I wanted to replicate that. So everything I do is really a way to find that, or to help someone find that workforce lottery win.
That is a really inspiring story. And this has been a really inspiring conversation. I mean, in terms of the work that CAEL is doing, the work that you've done all across the country throughout your career, it's so critical because there are so many people who are unemployed or underemployed, and yet there are so many employers who are banging their heads against the wall trying to find qualified people. And so trying to connect those dots is incredibly important, both for employers and individuals, but also for society as a whole. So I just want to thank you for the work you're doing. It's amazing. Are there things that we haven't covered today that you think our listeners should know about?
Well, I think we've hit on a few things. I just want to elaborate a bit more on this whole systems connection piece, and that's where employers can't do it alone. No matter how big they are, if they're multinational they are, they can't do it alone, and we've seen that. Education itself, overall, but particularly higher ed, can't do it alone. Obviously, the workers, students, adult learners need support, need help, especially those who are who are underemployed, who know how to go to work but don't know what the next steps are. They don't have the roadmap. So and the workforce systems, which I've had the pleasure of running in 2 different markets, as hard as they work and as resources they are, don't always connect to either or those institutions. So it's really this ecosystem of disconnection. And so the regions you asked earlier about what parts of the country we're working in, and what we're seeing is the groups that are aligned and really truly working together on behalf of the talent in their region are the ones that are starting to thrive. And that's where you leave the egos at the door and go, okay, we have problems to solve. If we're going to build our community, our region, our state, we have to come together, and that's what we're seeing is working. So that's we're really more of a consultant in that arena. So a large part of our work is starting to grow in that direction.
That's great. Yeah. It seems like so much is left to happenstance in terms of getting people through education into a career path. And that just, it seems kind of ridiculous. I mean, because you do have the education system, not just post-secondary, but also primary and secondary education kind of working in their own silo, not really focused on getting people into a career path. And then you've got employers who are trying to figure out how to recruit, but, they don't have people who are trained up to hit the ground running when they start right away. So why not connect the two of them and create kind of an actual strategic plan and a real map and a pathway where people follow a series of steps that are laid out for them, and then continue to develop their skills throughout their careers. So it's amazing that you've hit upon the solution to that problem.
Well, it's growing, and you just hit another piece, and it's in someone's path. And we've in the workforce arena, we've often said we're going to put someone on a pathway, right? But you never think about the path to those pathways, and that's kind of the missing piece here as well. So all these things can connect, but then what's the roadmap to, or the steps in that ladder, or the rungs, if that's the right terminology, that a person is going to have to follow? Because that first job is never your first job. It's never your last job, I should say. So what's the roadmap to? I think I've been you asked me a question earlier about why workforce, and also I want to mention that I bounced around a bit too before I settled in about 25 years ago in the workforce. I graduated from undergrad, and my dad's plan was me to go to law school. He's a trades guy. I didn't want his kid to do what he did, so he had a plan. Well, I didn't want to go to law school, so we've had that conversation offline. But I fell into education, so I was in the classroom for 4 years. And while it was fun and I got to coach, I didn't love that. And quite frankly, the pay was, you know what that is. Our listeners already know what that is. So I fell into workforce that way. And because no one goes to school to plan a career in workforce development, because there's no such thing. We all kind of stumble into it because our mission, our ambition, or an opportunity. So if we're going to stumble around this way, we should at least give folks some guidance so that they stumble less than they have. I guess that's where I was going with all of that.
Yeah, exactly. Or, even try to, reduce the stumbling around, make it so people don't have to stumble around at all. Like they start kind of thinking as early as middle school about, hey, what am I going to do for work when I get out, and then kind of try to figure out, okay, what do I need to do to get there? So it just seems really logical to to start planting seeds and helping people work out a pathway, rather than just kind of, leaving their career to chance, which is, kind of what I've done too. So getting blown around by the wind.
It looks like you're having fun, though.
It's true. I am having fun. It's worked out pretty well for me, as it has for you. So, well, wonderful, Earl. It's been a real pleasure talking with you again. I really want to thank you for the time you've spent with us today and for the work you're doing.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. And the second, I also want to thank you. I want folks to know that Lori has been a part of my career as well. We've run some great work together, and she's been a great leader. And I thank you for past and what we're going to do in the future.
Thank you so much, Earl. I really appreciate that. So for the listeners in the audience who want to learn more about CAEL and Strata Collaborative, links to both of their websites will be in the show notes. And Earl has generously allowed me to put his email in the show notes as well, in case you'd like to connect with him directly if you want to learn more about CAEL's work and how to partner with CAEL. So Earl, thank you again for being here today.